King Ramesses II User-maat Re, setepen Re, reigned from 1304 to 1237 BC. He is among the most well-known kings of the 19th dynasty. Following in his father Seti's footsteps, he governed Egypt for 66 years, building several temples and structures that immortalized his name for all eternity. He shared the rule with his father Seti, according to a text found on one of the walls of his father's temple in Abydos. Ramesses II disregarded this shared era and saw the start of his reign as coming from the moment he took the throne of Egypt by himself upon the death of his father. Following the passing away of the priest Nebnethruag, a member of a Thebes family, Ramesses II was forced to name a new high priest of the deity Amun at the start of his reign. The minister to King Seti was his son, Pa-Seir. Because of his smart, the king avoided giving this influential Theban family more power and influence in the state by not appointing a member to this important religious position. Instead, he appointed Nebwenenef, a priest from the city of Thanis, which is close to Abydos, as the high priest of the god Amun in Thebes. He was chosen for the Opet festival, which is held annually in the Luxor temple under the direction of the governing king, with the deity Amun's blessing. Nebwenenef left us an account of his life in his tomb, number 157, which is situated in the Dara Abu el-Naga cemetery on Thebes' western mainland. The capital was relocated by Ramesses II to a settlement north of the delta that he named Ramesses, which translates to the abode of Ramesses. Some scholars and experts believe that he founded it on the ruins of the Hyksos capital of Averroes, which was located 19 kilometers south of Tanis. Others, on the other hand, contend that the city of Tanis, which served as the capital of the 21st dynasty, was built on the ruins of the city of Ramesses. The city of Tanis is currently San al-Hajar, which is located in the Sharqiya northeast of the delta. The many archaeological artifacts discovered in the city, the majority of which date back to his rule, may serve as evidence for this. At the beginning of his reign, King Ramesses II engaged in combat with the Sardana, a group of sea peoples who later gave their name to Sardinia and it became their home. The second year of Ramesses II's reign is recorded on a stela discovered in Tanis, which states that they came in warships from the middle of the sea, and no one was able to repel them. As a result, Ramesses II was probably forced to fight them at one of the estuaries of the branches of the Nile, where he defeated and killed many of them, forcing the others to surrender. He therefore captured them as prisoners of war, and they later joined his army as soldiers. After 2 years, when he was certain of their loyalty, he added them to his private guard, and we see them with horned helmets, round shields, and enormous swords. We know that Ramesses II was forced to fight the Libyans when they started to advance on Egypt's western frontiers because of inscriptions engraved on a stela from his reign that was discovered close to El Alamein. Ramesses II built a fortification there to protect the western borders from the approaching Libyans. Ramesses II adopted a policy of defending his empire's borders in Asia after removal of Sardana from the delta in the north and the Libyans from the west. He began a military operation that reached Nahr al-Kalb, north of Beirut, in the 4th year of his rule. He was able to seize control of Nahr al-Kalb, which at that time was thought to be one of the most crucial routes for bringing different types of equipment into the country from the Mediterranean Sea, by taking over the coast of the Amurru kingdom. There, on a rock stela bearing his name, Ramesses II left us a record of this victory. Following this military operation, the prince of the Amurru kingdom, the kingdom over which Egypt and the Hittite kingdom disputed its sovereignty, called Bent Sina, joined Egypt and did not submit to the threats of the Hittite monarch Muwatalli. One of the factors that caused the Hittite king Muwatalli to assemble a sizable army in coalition with several other foreign countries in an effort to destroy Egyptian power in Asia was the kingdom of Amurru's entrance to the Egyptian side. After learning of this, Ramesses II led an army against the Hittite monarch and his allies in the 5th year of his reign. Ramesses II commanded that the famous Kadesh battle be shown in great detail on the walls and facades of the majority of the temples constructed under his rule. The events are depicted in words and images on the pylon of the Luxor temple, the walls of the Karnak and Abydos temples, the Ramesseum, a memorial temple located on Thebes' western mainland, and finally on the walls of his enormous rock-cut temple, also called the Great Temple of Abu Simbel. The details of this battle are also known to us because to a document written on one of the papyri. Having divided the 20,000 soldiers and leaders into 4 armies, Ramesses II gave each army a name derived from the names of the principal Egyptian gods, Amun, Re, Ta, and Seth. The army marched to the Oront River valley from Lebanon. 2 Bedouin spies who were dispatched by the Hittite king Muwatalli to monitor the movements of the Egyptian army were seized by the Egyptian soldiers there. They were able to fool the Egyptian military command with fabricated confessions that they had agreed upon with the Hittite monarch, suggesting that they had received training in such tactics. Following the heavy beating, they acknowledged that the Hittite monarch had retreated to Aleppo with his army upon learning of the Egyptian soldiers' march. On the other hand, the Egyptian armies were expecting a trap to destroy King Ramesses II and his army, while the Hittite monarch and his 2,500 war chariots, each carrying 3 soldiers, were concealed behind the city of Kadesh. Upon hearing the 2 spies' confessions, Ramesses II did not follow protocol and had his intelligence officers confirm what they said. Instead, he charged ahead of Amun's army in an attempt to catch up the opposing armies before they could catch up with him. The Hittite king and his soldiers were hidden behind the hills on the northeastern side, allowing them to detour until they reached the south, but he was unaware of this when he crossed the Oront River and set up camp with his personal guard and the army of Amun northwest of Kadesh. They attacked and scattered the second army, the army of Re, as soon as it started to cross the Oront River. The disintegration of the forces of Re and Amun was greatly aided by this unexpected attack, and Ramesses II was taken aback when his armies disbanded and just his personal guard remained with him, especially considering that the 3rd army of Ta and the 4th army of Seth were distant from him. When he found himself all alone, he prayed to the deity Amun and was able, with his courage and with the help of those around him, managed to survive. His special guards were able to assemble the remnants of his dispersed army, create a gap between the Hittite enemy's soldiers, and rescue the majority and most of his army. Especially since at the same moment a military force of young people arrived and joined him, the conflict shifted and turned in his favor. This could be because the Hittite warriors from the enemy were busy looting the Egyptian camps. Regardless, the bravery of the Egyptian king allowed him to protect his army from certain death, ruining the Hittite foe's trick and strategy. The Hittite monarch then wrote to Ramesses II, requesting pardon and to grant his subjects the breeze of life, according to the Egyptian records. After consulting his officers, Ramesses II decided to accept the Hittite enemy's submission. He left and went back to Egypt without adding the fortified city of Kadesh to his empire. From the perspective of the Egyptian texts, this is the case. The Hittite perspective is preserved on clay tablets discovered in Boghazköy in Anatolia. It is written in cuneiform writing. It relates the Egyptian defeat and the Hittite king's soldiers pursuing the Egyptian army's rear till Damascus. Given that some historians favor the Hittite story while others incline toward the Egyptian version, historians may find themselves torn between the 2 stories. Regarding the events of the military conflicts they recount in their writings, it is normal for the Hittite and Egyptian kings to preserve their reputation, dignity, prestige, honor, and for themselves. One of the things that drove Ramesses II to try again to rebuild the empire in Asia was the Battle of Kadesh. In the 8th year of his reign, he reorganized his army and launched a military expedition into Syria and Palestine with the goal of putting down the uprisings there and bringing stability back to the country. Egyptian and Hittite conflict continued until both parties came to the conclusion that peace would benefit them more. As a result, they came to an agreement known as Good Security and Brotherhood, to which the gods of Hittite and Egypt attested. The Egyptian texts written in hieroglyphic script on one of the Karnak complex's walls and the cuneiform texts on 2 clay tablets discovered in Boghazköy provide us with the details of this pact. The creation of an offensive-defensive alliance between King Ramesses II of Egypt and King Hattusili III of the Hittites was perhaps the treaty's most significant conclusion. It also covered how refugees from one country to the next should be treated when they return home as citizens rather than as criminals. Following that, the kings of the two countries started writing to each other friendly letters. In this communication, Queen Pudakeba, the wife of Hittite King Hattusili III, and Queen Nefertari, the wife of King Ramesses II, also took part. In addition, Hattusili III paid Egypt a friendly visit. It appears that Ramesses II's wish for a diplomatic marriage to Hattusili II's daughter, which happened in the 34th year of his reign, was one of the driving forces behind this correspondence. The king commanded that this joyous occasion be commemorated on several stelae and in multiple locations. Records of this marriage can be found on the walls of the Karnak and Abu Simbel temples. The texts state that the Hittite king's daughter had a beautiful face that made her seem like a goddess. Her beauty won the king's undying love, and he bestowed upon her the Egyptian name Re, which some have interpreted as Re. As a result, the two kings united into one heart, like brothers, and the two countries briefly enjoyed peace. After 30 years of reign, Ramesses II celebrated the first Jubilee, Hepsed, which he repeated in the 34th year. In the 37th year of his reign, he celebrated it for the third time. He carried on celebrating it until the 11th Jubilee in the 61st year of his reign. Before he passed away, he might have celebrated the 13th Jubilee. The scenes of the Wadi el-Sebwa temple in Nubia also reveal that Ramesses II had more than 100 descendants. This could be because of the quantity of his legitimate or secondary, illegitimate. One of his most well-known sons was perhaps Prince Kinwaz, who was interested in restoring antiques and was a priest to the deity Ta, and Prince Merinta, who succeeded him in the throne. With the temples, shrines, statues, and stelae he built across Egypt, Ramesses II achieved immortality. We refer to the front portion of the Luxor temple and how his continues of the Karnak complex's hypostyle hall. His temples are located in Nubia and Abydos. Perhaps the most well-known of them are the great temple of Abu Simbel, which was devoted to Amun, Re, and Ta, as well as the deified King Ramesses II himself, and the smaller Abu Simbel temple is devoted to the worship of the goddess Hathor and the deified Queen Nefertari. This is in addition to the temple erected in his honor, which he named the Ramesseum and which is located on Thebes' western mainland. Not content with all of this, Ramesses II usurped numerous statues and immortalized his name on them. Although his mummy, which was discovered in the Deir el-Bahari cache and is currently on display in the Egyptian Museum, was not discovered within the tomb that Ramesses II excavated in the Valley of the Kings. Regarding his wife, Queen Nefertari, she was buried in her famous tomb located in western Thebes' Valley of the Queen.